History. The focus for this week is we're going to be understanding the passing of bills into the Australian law system. So we're going to start off with first on making a law. Laws are formal rules which society uses to define how people and organisations are expected to behave. Section 51 of the Australian Constitution gives the Australian Parliament the power to make laws in relation to certain matters. In Parliament, a bill is a proposal for a new law or a change to an existing one. Bills often seek to address an important issue facing the Australian community. Next is the path of the bill. A bill can only become a law if it is passed by a majority vote in the Senate and the House of Representatives. The bill must be agreed to in identical form by both the Senate and the House and given royal assent by the Governor-General. It is then known as an Act of Parliament. An Act specifies the date on which the new law will commence. Often, this is the day after it receives royal assent. Most bills are introduced into the House of Representatives and then sent to the Senate. Bills may start in the Senate except for money and taxation bills. Most bills are introduced by government ministers. However, other members of Parliament can introduce their own bills, known as private members or private senators' bills. It may take months or even years for a bill to pass through Parliament. However, an urgent bill can be passed in a matter of hours or days. Well over 100 bills are introduced into Parliament each year, and about 90% of government bills are passed into law. Here we have the usual path of a bill. So in the green column on the left-hand side, we've got the House of Representatives. You can see there that the first reading, it's got the second reading, and it's got each different step that the House of Representatives takes before the bill is passed. And when it is passed in the House of Representatives, it is then sent to the Senate, which you can see in the middle, it's the pink column. So it goes through basically the same sort of process before it's passed in the Senate, and then it gets passed on to the Governor-General. And you can see once it goes through the royal assent, the Governor-General signs the bill becomes an Act of Parliament, and then the final product is a law for Australia. So now we're going to talk about the origins of the bills. Bills can start in different ways. The first way being a government department may advise its minister about a specific problem that exists. The minister may then arrange for a bill to be drafted to fix the problem. The second way is the community groups, businesses or lobby groups may be interested in changing or improving a specific area of Australian law. They can approach members of Parliament with suggestions for bills. The next way, it could be political parties could have their own ideas about how Australia should be governed. In Parliament, parties introduce bills which aim to put their ideas into action. And the last way, it could be from the Parliament, and they can set up a parliamentary committee to examine a current issue. If the issue requires action, the committee may suggest that a bill be introduced. Okay, now we're going to talk about the history. The lawmaking process used in the Australian Parliament comes from the practices of the British Parliament developed over many centuries, which we know from the previous lesson, which was talking about if Australia is still connected to Britain, and this is how it is still connected. This is one of the ways it's still connected, sorry. The word bill probably comes from the Latin word bulla, meaning seal. In medieval times, seals were put on documents written by a king or person in authority. During the 16th century in England, the word bill came to mean a draft for an Act of Parliament. And they're not talking about the animal seal, they're talking about a seal that is stuck on a document and it's got an imprint of an image on it. The practice of the clerk reading the bill aloud 3 times dates back to the early British Parliament, before printing was invented and many people could read. The clerk had to read the bill aloud so that the members of Parliament knew what the bill was about. Today, bills still go through the 3 readings, but the clerk only reads the title of the bill. And here I've put the logo for the Australian Parliament on the left-hand side. You can see the many different Australian icons that are created into this logo, and then underneath the writing you can see there's a current up-to-date picture of the Australian Parliament House, and we know that this resides in Canberra. The history of lawmaking in Australia is long and varied. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of Australia had their own form of law which covered all aspects of their lives, this including its culture, land, and law. Some groups still follow these laws today. Since European arrival, the structure of lawmaking has developed according to the needs of the population. Laws were originally passed by the governments of the separate colonies. By the 1870s, local governments were being formed, and the power to create bylaws concerning local matters were introduced. After federation, the colonies became states, and the Constitution set out the separations of lawmaking powers. So I've got 4 questions for you this week. These can be directly typed into your Google document. The first is, how many times does the House of Representatives read the bill before it is passed and sent to the Senate to read? So this can be found on the infographic back, I think it may be on slide 2 or 3. The second question is, how long does it take for an urgent bill to be passed? The third question, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of Australia had their own form of law, and which different aspects of their lives did it cover? I just spoke about this in the last slide. Number 4 is, which section of the Australian Constitution gives the Australian Parliament the power to make laws in relation to certain matters? So this was one of the first things I spoke about. You need to find the actual number of which section of the law. There is a number, section something.